Hi, I'm Dr. David Dobson. Welcome to Conversations. Today, my guest is Dr. Jon Thomas. Jon is an associate professor of innovation and entrepreneurship at UFV School of Business. He is also the director of the Esposito Family Centre for Innovation and Entrepreneurship and the BC Regional Innovation Chair in Canada-India Partnership Development at the University of the Fraser Valley. He holds a PhD in technology management and strategy from Indian Institute of Technology in Delhi. It's a great pleasure to have you with me today, Jon.
Thank you. Thank you very much, David. Thank you for this opportunity to be in conversation with you.
Your research and teaching focus is on innovation and entrepreneurship. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yes. So I have been driven for the past 2 decades with this focus on really supporting the translation of impactful ideas from universities to society. And more specifically, in research terms, I study science and technology commercialization from university settings.
Nice.
And I'm also the BC Regional Innovation Chair, building Canada-India partnerships. So I built research partnerships with the leading institutes in India. For example, I'm right now building partnerships with the Indian Institute of Technology Madras, which is right now the #1 institute in India, and as well with the Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore, with the aim of supporting the innovation ecosystem in both nations.
Okay.
As director of FC, I work with students, faculty members, and local entrepreneurs in the Fraser Valley when they're looking to refine their business plans, to refine their ideas, and deciding when and whether to start a business targeting a specific sector.
Why were you interested in this area, Jon?
So when I was doing my MBA, that's more than 2 decades ago, I became very interested in innovation as a topic. It was one of the modules, I think, in the marketing course, and I became very interested in innovation and the impact it could have on the world as a process, right? And later on, I started realizing how innovation in the biotechnology sector could be particularly impactful to society. For example, in the healthcare sector, with the development of biotech drugs, medications through biopharma sector, in the food and ag sector with food biotechnology, as well as in other industrial sectors with industrial enzymes, which could work in, say, the textile industry, which is very important in many nations, particularly India.
Yeah.
And this led me to focus in my PhD at IIT Delhi on innovation in the biotech industry in India. And I finished my PhD and still wanted to do further work and realized that there is so much always to learn. And so I came to Canada for a postdoc at Simon Fraser University, understanding that the translation of ideas can be a long and complex process. And I worked with my colleagues at SFU to uncover how inventions originating from universities can be better translated for societal impact. So I have a range of projects that I'm working on with national as well as international collaborators. So we have projects looking at clean energy and clean tech, like a green hydrogen project that I'm working on with colleagues from SFU and a university in Germany, where we are looking at the value chain of green hydrogen. Canada has historically, if you look at the Canadian innovation ecosystem, Canada has historically been very strong in research, but less strong in getting that research out in the form of products and services to Canadians and to the market. And so we have strengths, exceptional strengths in one part of that innovation value chain, and not so much in the translation of that. And that's where my research is in how can we assist faculty members, postdocs, scientists, undergrad students in transforming their ideas and getting them out to the market. So leveraging the strengths that we already know exist in Canadian universities. And how can we better design university policies? How can we better design provincial and federal granting and support systems to acknowledge this great research, but at the same time, encouraging them to get to society in some form? Well, I am really, really excited with the idea that I have interviewed many, many scientists who have become entrepreneurs. And very often the question that sort of is important to them is not if they will make money or profit from their ideas. It is how their work can change the world. And so I'm not trained as a scientist. I have an undergrad in statistics followed by an MBA. And I thought, well, what can I do? And I started with my research, and I thought, okay, if I can incentivize or support these scientists and help in the design of policies and processes which allow for a smoother flow of ideas from the academic labs into society. So a lot of research over the past decade and a half and more has really, with my colleagues, trying to figure out through a range of papers, what can Canadian universities do better, or North American universities do better to support grad students, to support postdocs, support scientists from the lab. And right now I'm also involved in a program called the Invention to Innovation program from Simon Fraser University. I came to UFV from SFU, so I have ties with SFU. And a lot of the research that my colleagues and I work on is embedded in that program. And we are, this program is funded by my tax, and we are training scientists, engineers, faculty members across all of Canada to work on their ideas and get them to the next stage, to better prepare them for the market uncertainties that all of us know that exist, right?
In your recent research paper, you discuss academic scientists who were successful entrepreneurs. Please share your findings.
No, that's a great question, and I think sort of linking to my previous answer, for all the interviews that we did with a large number of academic scientists, what we started realizing was that very often the work that scientists do in academia is often driven by their disciplinary research questions, or that's what they focus on. And during the course of their experiments, out of the many experiments that they do, if something is unique or something comes up as a unique finding, much later down the line, they start thinking, well, could there be a market for it? Should I go for a patent? So there are many years of research before you start thinking about the market, right? And that is where our research has found that there is a challenge, because many a times after 3, 4, 5, 7 years of research, you come up with something very unique, very novel. You think you might want to patent, you think you might want to start a company. But when you do go out to the market or to society, sometimes the answer back from society is, we are not sure how it's useful for us, right? So the answer after 6, 7 years of work may be something that is not as relevant for society. So our research on a star scientist from the MIT ecosystem has been that he uses the understanding of unmet market needs to design research projects. And I'm sure, like I've read a bit about the projects you do with your students, which are very aligned to industry industry too, in that you're focused on what industry needs, and that's what your students work on. And that's sort of the what we are trying to get embedded in sort of the STEM researchers who are working on their projects, to think about, well, if I solve this problem, is there someone at the other end interested in that solution? So and so you don't lose 3 or 5 or 7 years of your effort in working on something which is not as relevant for society. So that's probably the most fundamental distinction that we have, and that we show in our research paper. We call it early stage technology market matching, done during the project formulation stage, ideally. Then, of course, there is the context of claiming and protecting inventions, because if you get to the level of, as scientists, we are trained to publish research papers and share our knowledge with society through teaching our students, through publishing papers. It's about sharing knowledge. And yet, when you're talking about entrepreneurship or science-based entrepreneurship, it is about protecting that knowledge. So how do you balance one set of incentives which tell you to share with another set of incentives which tell you to protect? And so we uncover some of the layers of that challenge to guide scientists on when to share, how to share, when to structure patenting versus publishing. Then we talk about attracting and building a founding team. It's very important for scientists to appreciate that you cannot do it alone, right? So you need other members in your team. You need other people who may not be trained as scientists, but who may be bringing valuable business experience and expertise. And so it is a combination of science and business, right? And then we talk about strategic timing, which is critical. Because very often what works in the lab and what works in the market are two very different things, even for the same technology. So you can have a lab scale experiment that is successful, but when you talk about manufacturing scale, when instead of making 10 ml of a new compound, you have to make 1,000 liters of that same compound. The process and procedures are very different. The regulatory approvals are very different. And often for many of these science-based ideas, you might need external funding, whether it's through angel investors, whether it is through venture capitalists. And typically VCs in particular have a window. They will invest in your venture, but they want to exit in 3 to 5 years, right? And sometimes these ideas need more than 3 to 5 years of additional work before they are ready. So there is often a mismatch between the VC's time to exit versus the amount of research that needs to be done. And remember, this is a period where you are burning through cash in terms of paying the rent in your wherever you're located, costs of experimentation, reagents, cost of paying salaries to all these scientists. And typically you may not have any product to sell, and therefore no revenues coming in. You're surviving off of grants. And so in this complex situation, what is fundamental is deciding when to incorporate your venture or not. So what you do inside the university lab is very critical. If you start your venture too early, then you start the clock, right? And if you start that clock, you ideally VCs will want you, if you get VC funding, they will want you they will want to exit from your venture in 3 to 5 years. If you're really lucky, 7 years. In case you are not there yet, you don't have a product at the end of 5 years, everyone will lose interest in your venture. You won't be able to raise funding. You don't have a product to sell, and things go downhill. So when you form to start a venture, is that timing of that decision is critical. Too early and you may not survive. It is better to work in stealth mode, is what we say in the university research lab, and delay firm formation until you have something we term a pipeline of good news. And what might this good news look like? It is additional patents that you can show that have been granted, additional papers that you have published, additional regulatory approvals that you might have received, additional funding from grant sources. So remember, none of these good news items are revenues coming back, but they are indicators of progress to investors. So I've in our research we've talked about scientists like Robert Langer from MIT. We've studied Professor Peter Cullis from the University of British Columbia, who was foundational in starting more than 10 biomed ventures in the Vancouver and Lower Mainland ecosystem. Also played an important role in the Center for Drug Research and Development, where I did part of my postdoc. And our latest paper also looks at Carl Hansen, who's behind the company AbCellera, which was funded by DARPA. And we've written up a paper about AbCellera's experience in Nature Nanotechnology last year, where we look at how they structured the value chain and how they have built out a model which is based on partnerships. And so the main focus of most of this research is how do scientists balance scientific uncertainty as well as market uncertainty. So the science itself is uncertain and you're refining and improving. But solving scientific uncertainty doesn't mean that market uncertainty is not important. So you've got to understand the market, you've got to understand clinical trials or other approvals that you might need. Say in the ag tech sector, there are so many regulations to follow. And perhaps you'll see that I've quickly come into professor mode and just giving lots and lots of detail.
In your paper, you talk about star scientists who are kind of ahead. So can you explain a little bit who are these star scientists?
Yes. So I think if you look at the history of technology development, and particularly in North America, when you look at science and technology commercialization more broadly, what the literature shows is, for example, in the emergence of the biotechnology industry in the mid 80s, early 80s, it is scientists who started getting connected with venture capitalists. And a few leading scientists doing that. Now, there are layers to it. For example, like when should a scientist start thinking about ventures? Now, the way our current incentive structures are set up in universities, if you start doing that pre-tenure, it is typically not supported in many institutions to be thinking about sort of. So once you get tenure, there's more flexibility, there's more there are lesser constraints and lesser challenges. So that's been one of the practice items. Therefore, for many of the star scientists, particularly from the biomed domain, what has been noted is it is some of the more senior scientists who already have research expertise and research credibility in their space for more than a decade or more, who have lots of publications, grad students, and so on. They are the ones who ventured out to start forming ventures. And there are a handful like Robert Langer and others who sort of, I would say, follow that Pareto principle, where 20% of these scientists or a smaller proportion of these scientists are responsible for most of the technologies emerging out of university settings. Now, this was broadly true, I would say, for a lot of the time, though with increasing entrepreneurship training for scientists, engineers, for I should say, even doctors, physicians in other parts, not so much in Canada, but in other parts, to get them to think about some of these aspects is changing and spreading the number of people. So while star scientists is the focus, and the reason why we chose in that paper to focus on a star scientist was the outlier effect, in that just the quantum of that phenomena, which was so clearly evident in the experience of this individual. However, that paper was one individual star scientist's experience over 40 years.
Okay.
So we have studied 40 years of his career, starting from his grad school to his pre-tenure days, to post-tenure, to when he started his first venture, to when he co-founded 30 ventures,
Okay.
and so on, right?
Yeah.
So while I do say it is still very much an outsized impact,
Yeah.
that impact has flowed with a very large number of collaborators
Yeah.
across 40 years.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
our interest in this phenomena is
Yeah.
not so much to look at where he is today,
Okay.
but it is more important to understand how he began.
Okay.
Because for all we know,
Yeah.
there might be many Langers or many Peter Cullises or Carl Hansens in our own ecosystems, in our own institutions.
Yeah.
And the question that's of interest to me is, how can we support people in those early stages so that they have the right foundations or training and supports
Mhm.
which allows them to flourish and contribute to society?
Mhm.
So the interest is not so much as to
Yeah.
what will happen 40 years later.
Yeah.
It's like, how do we support them now
Yeah.
so that they can
Yes.
become, or
Yeah.
they can get
Yeah.
close
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
achieving their full potential.
Yeah. You made an interesting point, because those star scientists, because I think they already have a success, so people kind of trust them. They already, like, they already have achieved success, and so it's for them, raising fund, raising resources is relatively easy. Whereas someone who's new, it's hard for them to start, and plus they don't have any experience so far.
Yes, and that is why uh, we talk about path dependence, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so if 15 years into your career you start thinking about market needs, then in a way you've lost 15 years,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
What we try to show is, if at the start of your career you are thinking about market needs, then the kind of projects that you work on, the kind of research collaborators you choose, the kind of impacts that you build will
Yeah.
be quite different over
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And I acknowledge that scientific research and any research, really, like thoughtful, high quality research, takes time.
Yeah.
So what you do, and it's sort of like if you look at finance, it's about investment and those cumulative gains over time, right?
Yeah.
And so what you choose early on and what you choose to focus early on
Yeah.
is truly the impact of that can be felt not just through decades. And one of the quotes that I really follow is the outsized impact that researchers and professors have or can have
Yeah.
on the careers of their students. So
Yeah.
one aspect of Bob Langer's success is that many a times his companies involve, in fact, almost all of his companies involve grad students from his lab, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so the impact is not just of that
Yeah.
individual, it's
Yeah.
that the grad students are
Yeah.
trained and
Yeah.
they join these companies.
Yeah.
And some of the grad students who go on to become professors at other universities,
You're
they
right.
then continue this cycle and
Yeah.
they start their
Yeah.
own companies, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
there's this
Yeah.
outsized impact over
Yeah.
decades. So
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
impact of professors
Yeah.
flows through time.
Yeah. It's
Yeah, and therefore I think particularly in, say, the context of UFV, where we
yeah.
have small class sizes, where
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
have this one-on-one attention that we
Yeah.
give to our students,
Yeah.
and the kind of research opportunities that
Yeah.
our undergrad students have,
Yeah.
is a very unique
Yeah.
experience which can really allow for
Yeah.
some of these longer term ideas to play out. Of course, they might go to
Right.
grad school at some other
Yeah.
university, but
Yeah.
the ideas that we seed here in our
Yeah.
institution
Yeah.
can over time play out and have a
Yeah.
magnified
Yeah.
impact.
Yeah.
And of course, when you bring them back as guest
Yeah.
speakers into the
Yeah.
classroom to
Yeah.
allow for that sharing
Yeah.
of knowledge, and
Yeah. Yeah.
giving them a platform
Yeah.
to also share their experiences
Yeah.
with the current set of students,
Yeah.
it's hugely impactful over
Yeah.
time. It
Yeah.
creates that positive cycle, uh,
Absolutely.
and allows for, and I strongly feel that
Yeah.
a lot of innovation is also about being comfortable with and
Mm-hmm.
understanding and learning from failure.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the experience of entrepreneurship often focuses on successes more than it does on failure. And
True.
yet failure is perhaps nearly 80%, if not more, of the experience of entrepreneurship over time. If you look at most successful entrepreneurs, embedded in their careers and early stages often might be several failures before they landed. It would be highly unusual that somebody had their first company and that became a billion-dollar company. It would be somewhat unusual.
Yeah. What can universities do to encourage and foster a culture of innovation and entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I find that universities are very complex and at sometimes wide spaces where often many initiatives are siloed for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
And yet, what I feel is that great ideas need both internal advocacy and support, as well as at a certain stage when that transition is taking that idea from within the university to outside the university, there needs to be a support outside the university too, right? So there is that ecosystem of supports, both internal as well as external, that are needed. And a lot of these are built on partnerships. Partnerships are built on trust and having a long-term common vision. So in terms of how or what universities could do to support a culture of innovation, what I would say is encouraging various stakeholders to work together when building out innovation and entrepreneurship initiatives. Often initiatives can be siloed or too distant from social needs. An important aspect is the ability to explore a range of perspectives. For example, like if you have, say, an ag tech idea, that could be informed by the ag aspect of it. And the ag even can be further divided into, say, the perspective of the farmer to the perspective of the scientist and how they build together. Then you get into the business aspects of the market, the competition. Then you get into the regulatory aspects. Then you might get into the export aspects if you want to sell your produce. So one idea, getting it off the ground in one sector, can involve or would need to be informed by expertise of many people along that chain. The other thing is being open to feedback, and I think this is emphasized again and again in many settings, whether it is in my conversations with VCs or angel investors, is often what they're looking for is people leading these initiatives at, say, university level, or when you're at the level of an individual entrepreneur, is you have to be open to feedback. And feedback, you should actually look for somewhat more critiques, because it's easier to get good feedback when everybody says, well, great job. But I think a thoughtful, meaningful critique which says, well, I think your idea is good, but perhaps you would want to think about something like this, right? And the reason why somebody is choosing to share some of that not so positive feedback is they want you to succeed. They want you not to fail or not to make the same mistakes that they have seen happen. But giving that advice is difficult, and taking that advice is even more difficult. And that is part of the challenge of supporting entrepreneurship and innovation. Then being accepting of failure and understanding really the importance of metrics. For example, if you have an incubator or an accelerator, if you say the job of an incubator and accelerator is, we are going to measure ourselves by saying how many companies have we started each year. So I would be somewhat careful with the choice of such a metric, because what that might lead to is you are forcing or you are encouraging company formation without maybe fully making sure if the ideas are strong enough. So you might be pushing teams or pushing individuals to start ventures, which might suit your metrics to, well, last year we created 3, this year we have 5 or 7 or 10 and so on. But the question really is, as we for all of us who teach entrepreneurship and innovation, is how many of those ventures will survive in 5 years' time, right? And so the question really is being thoughtful in assessing, are the ideas ready for prime time? And so the question is,
Yeah.
Do we train our students and faculty members and our ecosystem? Do we work with our ecosystem to build a culture where we are carefully assessing ideas
Yeah.
and then choosing when to form a venture, and then the ecosystem gets behind it? So I'm more cautious in that regards, particularly because my lens often is science-based ventures with that long timelines. Is if we are encouraging formation of ventures quickly, that may often be counterproductive. And finally, understanding that building an innovation culture takes time. You just cannot flip a switch and expect that a culture which was not so innovative suddenly becomes innovative. It's built on trust. It takes time to recognize that and to embed that in expectations. One of the discussions I've had with one of the CEOs and leading scientists is a lot of entrepreneurship is about managing expectations and among stakeholders, right? So everybody wants to accelerate or wants a quick success, and yet success or enduring success is often not quick. And I again give the example of Accelera. Like the reason why we focused on that company from the Lower Mainland was because when the COVID-19 crisis was upon us in March 2020, Accelera played an important role in getting the first one of the first COVID-19 therapeutics to market by November 2020. So it was quite miraculous, and this shows the power of science commercialization, the field that I study, and it shows how scientists and the work of scientists came to the fore when the world had shut down, right? And how that emerged. And yet the point we make in our paper is this sort of overnight success was 20 years in the making. Wow. And so if we really track what Accelera had been doing and the research that was involved in this, they had been doing that work for 20 years from the year 2000 onwards, across multiple institutions, which led to this rapid solution emerging. So good things take time, and innovation culture change requires time. It requires trust. It requires partnerships, and managing of expectations so that people really understand what they're getting into.
Based on your research, what advice do you have for academic scientists to develop their entrepreneurial capabilities?
I would strongly suggest that academic scientists focus or search for avenues and take some kind of entrepreneurship training and be better attuned to market needs. The earlier in their career they do that, the better it will be for them long term. And we are seeing that play out in sort of many of these instances that we are tracking ourselves. And the reason why I say that is this understanding of what society needs, what kind of can inform the kinds of research projects that they choose to work on. It can inform the kinds of collaborations they seek. It can lead to the kind of long-term social impact that they seek to achieve. Because many of these scientist entrepreneurs who've been successful and who are working towards success, often their focus is not just on profit or money. Their focus is, in the work that I do, how can I change the world? How can me and my grad students, how can we change? How can we, our community, our society, Canada, how can we change? Whether it is fighting climate change, whether it is other forms of clean tech, green hydrogen, many of these areas, the focus is how can our work inform and support societal developments. And in terms of assessing the kind of projects that they are already working on, they should be asking questions like, who would benefit if I solve this problem? Is it a farmer? Is it a physician or a clinician? Is it a patient group? Is it a small business or a policymaker? If I solve this problem, I'm devoting 6 months or a term paper or a capstone project. If I solve this problem, who will benefit? So having that clear idea, it is challenging. It's not something that comes immediately to mind.
Yeah.
But in your thoughts, as you formulate projects, as you search for collaborators, as you search for grant funding and things like that,
Yeah.
if you have this focus, it will go a long way in addressing significant needs. It will go a long way in assisting you in getting funding for your initiatives.
Cool. You mentioned the training. Like when you say training, what do you have in mind? This entrepreneurial trainings for the
So
scientists.
what we do is we I'll speak of the experience that I'm involved in with the Invention to Innovation program we have. A lot of it is based on the research that I talked to you about with my collaborators. And what we do there is we bring in students who have an idea that they might want to take to market. And through our range of courses, we help them refine their idea, asking them, well, what are the specific aspects of ideas, and asking them questions like this one, like who is going to benefit and what is your path to the market? If it's in the healthcare setting, for example, there is a distinction between who uses your product, who buys your product, who prescribes your product as a doctor. How do you get approval? For example, through the Health Authority and Health Canada. And so we train them to think about how much work remains and what should be their own focus and who are the other people they need to bring to the table. And sometimes in several instances, these are people who have not yet formed a venture.
Right. Yeah.
And here I would also like to put the caveat that every idea need not become a venture. It can be licensed out too, right? So you can license it to an existing company. So that is also a decision that you can take where you say that, well, I have this technology, I have a patent that I filed, whether with the support of the university or by yourself and your team. You could take that idea to market with the support of an existing company where you license that technology. And there are nuances in that process too, but broadly, every idea need not have to go through venture formation.
What advice do you have for students wanting to develop their entrepreneurial skills?
The number one thing that I would say is start with the problem in society that you seek to solve. So often it is reverse. It is like, what can I make? And then the question is, who will buy it? And that's where the problem is. The problem should be reverse is understand what is the problem in society. That's your starting point. And what's the problem facing a farmer? What's the problem facing a physician? What's the problem facing a nurse and then work backwards and say, what could I or my team do to solve that specific problem? Unless that connection to a problem in society is there, you will have more of a challenge convincing people to support your process or innovation journey. And then the second question, more from an investment lens, is it just a problem for one individual, or is it more of a problem for society? Is it a problem just for small farmers and not for large farmers? Right? And is it a problem for just farmers in the Fraser Valley, or is it a problem for farmers across Canada? Or is it for across North America? So the size of the market. Some examples of such large-scale problems are climate change, wildfires, cancer treatment, obesity, aging. These are broad problems affecting societies across the world. And so whatever you work on, if it has some of those large-scale implications, it might, if you have a strong product, you might have an easier path to the market. Then the nature of existing solutions, of course. So when you are developing a solution, you will have competition. There will be other players also targeting some of these. So being aware of what's the closest competitors, how is your solution better than them? So these are some of the things that we get students and teams to focus on, is trying to get them to articulate, well, are you unique? Do you have a long-term competitive advantage? And that's what we do at our innovation center too. When entrepreneurs are reaching out to us or students are reaching out to us, is working with them to better answer these questions and reformulate some of their ideas. And our center, if you allow, we students can or people can reach out to us at innovate@ufv.ca.
Thank you for your time, John. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.